Adam ducked behind a nearby wall as bolts of invisible laser fire slammed through the space he just inhabited. Two left, he thought, as he dropped the power pack from the HSR-11 and grabbed a fresh one from the body next to him. Two left, cut through the back hallway and keep moving away from the firefight outside. Yeah, if I was a bitch made noble, that's exactly what I'd do. With a fresh magazine loaded, he dropped to one knee and leaned around the corner, just enough to get a sideline on the ducal guardswoman on the left side of the 90-degree bend in the hallway. He sent 3 rounds of automatic fire into her shoulder, followed by 4 to her helmet, as the impact stumbled her out from cover. Pulling behind the wall, he inhaled deeply before dropping to his left shoulder, exposing the top part of his body to line up a shot on the other woman on the right side of the hallway, only to have his weapon kicked from his hand, followed by a gut-rattling kick to his solar plexus. "Fallen in the Duchess, ladies," a familiar outer voice sounded above him, as he struggled to shake the stars from his vision. "I've got this one." Adam felt himself being dragged to his feet, and was hauled off down the hallway. His attacker leaned him against the wall, following with a rough pat to his face and a chuckle. He managed to shake away the pain, and finally focused on the black armor-clad figure in front of him. He looked up to see a death's head looking at him, with her head canted, the Duchess's crest emblazoned on her arm. The woman stepped back a few feet, pulled her helmet off, and shook out a mane of chin-length white hair. The early middle-aged Shorvanti woman who had dragged him to his cell and force-fed him pills earlier looked at him with a sad smile. "Fuck, just kill me," spat Adam, hawking a blood-soaked loogie at her feet. "Not yet," chuckled the woman morosely. "Figured I'd give you a fair fight before you die." "So what, you're just waiting for me to shake off the sucker punch?" asked Adam darkly, looking around the small warehouse room she'd taken him to. Wooden crates filled many of the shelves in the 30-meter by 30-meter square enclosure. He refocused on the mountain of a woman as she turned the lock in the door a few feet away from him, threw her helmet on the ground, and stepped into the open space about 3 meters away. "Yeah, that's about it. I have orders. No matter what happens, only one of us is leaving this room," she shrugged, holding her hands out to her side in a neutral gesture. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry." "Sorry?" groaned Adam, rising to his feet, using a nearby crate to steady himself. "Yeah," the woman sighed, running a hand absently through her hair as she briefly turned to look at an explosion outside the window. "We can't all work for the good guys." "So change sides," grunted Adam, pressing a hand to an injured rib as he exhaled through gritted teeth. "That's what I did." "Can't." "Why not?" "Because orders are orders, big guy," she sighed, avoiding his eyes. "If we just start doing whatever the fuck we feel like, the entire system breaks down. And besides, even if I do live, I'm going to jail for the rest of my life." "So this is suicide by resistance fighter?" chuckled Adam, cracking his neck and staring her down. "That, or I escape with the Duchess. One way or another, I'm not going back," she replied with a soft smile. "Though if you keep looking at me like that, I might want to turn myself over just to spend more time with you." "Really?" Adam asked with a laugh, as a massive explosion shook the building. "Flirting at a time like this?" "Don't see any other girls around to distract you," she shrugged with a genuine grin. "And besides, I never had any interest in the other guys the Duchess brought back. If I wasn't under a sworn contract, I probably would have tried to join up with a proper mercenary company. But you're different." "Turn state's evidence, or whatever you guys call it." He crossed his arms over his chest with a wince. "I'll talk to the Empress on your behalf, get them to cut you a deal." "Don't deserve it. Wish I did," she replied, looking away from him. "Listen, when I was a resistance fighter, I tortured people, let men get by with murdering civilians, and drank the Kool-Aid hard," said Adam soberly, taking a pensive step towards the woman, who looked on the verge of tears. "It took 4 beautiful women dragging me light years away from my home, giving me new purpose and loving me to convince me that I was worth more than a life spent in a dingy hole in the mountains. All of that," he continued, pointing out the window to the sounds of chaos and mayhem, "is them coming for me. If I deserve a better life and a chance of redemption, don't you?" "No, I upheld the wrong oath. I served the Duchess," she replied, her jaw flexing as she turned her golden eyes to him. The edges tinged blue as a small tear tracked down the right side of her face. "I wish we were on the same side. Then I'd have a chance." "Don't give me that star-crossed lovers bullshit." He grabbed a heavy crowbar-type tool off a crate near him, testing the weight with a few swings. "I can see that you don't want this fight. Let me out of here. Your oath is to the Duchess, right?" "I can't do that, and yes it is," she nodded somberly, a soft smile crossing her face. "And if the Duchess gets fucking ganked, what happens to your oath?" he asked, adjusting his grip. "I'm released from my contract, but—" "Good," interrupted Adam with a predatory smile, settling into a fighting stance. "Now, I'm going to beat you within an inch of your life. Then I'm going to go kill the Duchess. After, you're going to help me tear down every inch of this organization. Sound good? I admire your confidence, but really? A weapon? She bit her lower lip and looked at him hungrily. I thought this was supposed to be fair. Way I see it, you've got a foot and a half on me, so it is fair, he replied, shaking out the weapon in his right hand and returning the smile. Should I be shirtless too, then? She asked, gesturing to her top with a teasing grin, turning the corners of her lips. Stop trying to distract me, he chuckled. I'm Trexgy, by the way, she stated with a small chuckle. Adam McGinnis. 50 cc's of antimerexin, thought Cell, as she pulled the proper hypo-stim from her pack and slammed it into the wounded Glaive's upper thigh. Her arm had been removed by a large explosion, and while the suit was doing its best to staunch the bleeding, she still needed a proper dose of painkillers to avoid going into shock. Cell had, in effect, taken over the CHP, and was currently running circles around the other medics, jumping from patient to patient, removing shrapnel, staunching sucking chest wounds, and staving off death from severed limbs. Jumping back to Grim, she checked the bandages around her severed legs, cut off just below the knees. Gonna need to amputate to equal length back at base, but she'll live, Cell thought with a grimace, looking to the firefight in the distance as another shuttle landed near the stretchers, several medics quickly rushing to load the wounded onto the craft. Hey! Barked Cell, watching one of the medics pick up a stretcher haphazardly, the Glaive in it, suffering from a shrapnel wound to her spine. Ease up! Spinal wound! The medic turned to her counterpart briefly before turning back to Cell. Yes, ma'am, the pair nodded in unison, visibly shifting their grip to gingerly carry the stretcher. Cell blinked. She wasn't used to Marines, let alone Glaives, though she did know treating her with respect. So far, her small takeover of the casualty holding point, and running of the majority of field surgeries and stabilizations, had been met with the Glaive medic snapping crisp salutes and treating her word as if she had bars on her shoulders. At worst, it was met with pensive compliance, at least on the part of one medic when she suggested an unusual concoction, as the woman had an allergy to the standard pain medicine. After Cell was proven right, none of her further orders were questioned. Scepter, this is Craig Free, came Slip's panicked voice over the radio. I pushed into the compound, took a hit to the servos. My arm is locked up, I'm pinned, and I can't move. Cell's heart dropped deep into her stomach, as she felt a swelling void of anger and fear open beneath her. They had her wife pinned down. I can't get to you, came Popper's voice a scant second later, causing Cell to grimace under her helmet, beginning to hyperventilate. She pulled up the friendly tracker in her helmet and saw a single blue dot in the middle of the courtyard, ahead of any friendly troops by several dozen meters. No, she panicked, as flashbacks to the trenches of Indragi 8 flashed through her mind, while watching her friends and pods slowly whittled away until it was just her left. Not again. Not my wife, no. Fuck this rear guard bullshit, she shouted, grabbing 3 auto-injectors from her bag before dropping it on the ground. I'm an Empress down Death's Head. She inhaled deeply as she began to hum the tune of her song for Adam in the case to herself. She slammed the first adrenaline injector into her right thigh, depressing the button, feeling her heartbeat faster. She slammed the second injector, loaded with a heavy dose of berzethomethylgolnine, into her leg immediately after, her breathing quickening as she felt the newfound energy flow through her. She injected the third, a vial of bezendrine, and felt the world shift and focus around her. Exhaling a shuddering breath, she drew her mother's Krinderi, a large recurved blade from her homeworld, with her left hand, and the HSP-9 on her hip with her right. Activating the sprint kit on her suit, she turned to the battlefield and let loose a primal shriek. Slip groaned as she pulled herself into a small crater, her legs locked up in her suit. Someone had gotten a lucky shot at her back, hitting the small computer system that controlled her jump and sprint kit. She gritted her teeth as small puffs of dirt flew up on the edge of the depression she was currently hiding in. Pulling her sidearm from her holster, she readied herself for the inevitable end before an unearthly scream pierced the cracks and explosions of the battlefield, echoing around the outer walls of the compound. The gunfire stilled momentarily, as everyone seemed to take a second to identify what just happened, when a black-clad streak flew over her crater. Is that Cell? She thought, as she heard panic yells come from the enemy line. Straining with effort, she dragged her uncooperative body up to the edge of the crater, and peeked over the edge. Just in time to see Cell leap onto one of the ducal guards, and plunge her large, curved knife into the woman's throat, jerking it back to one side. Cell sprang off the woman's chest, launching the dying woman several feet away, as her lighter weight figure was sent a dozen meters away, just in front of a group of ducal guards trying to get a line on her. She landed with a roll, and stood up under one of the women. plunging her knife into the enemy soldier's guts, and grabbed her rifle by the barrel, jerking it from the dying woman's hands. She spun with the grace of a dancer, still holding the rifle by the muzzle, and battered another's face with the weapon, sending the second soldier sprawling, clutching at the shattered glass of her helm. Slip watched as Cell ripped off her own helmet and leaped at the last woman in the pod, who was frozen in shock, and began to beat her mercilessly with her commando helmet. After several seconds of stunned silence with the hostiles in the yard, Cell stood. Her helmet was held loosely in her right hand, shattered and dripping with the crushed blue remnants of the guard woman's skull. She placed her foot on the dead woman's chest and turned to face Slip, her teeth bared and her silvery eyes hooded, before lifting her head skyward and releasing another otherworldly cry. She strode confidently over to Slip, seemingly unfazed by the dozens of ducal guards aiming weapons at her, unsure what to do, and probably terrified by her display. Cell leaned down to Slip as she reached her, and growled a single word. Wife. Adam dodged another punch thrown by Rexy, as he come to taunt her with during their fight. Come on, put some effort into your swings, he teased, as he used the hooked end of the pry bar to hook around her left leg and pull it out from under her. You're lucky I decided not to use my sprint kit, she grumbled with a smile as she clambered to her feet. You gonna finish this? Duchess is gonna get away. Adam grimaced. She was right. But unfortunately he hadn't had an opportunity to take her down without seriously risking killing her. In truth, he wanted her in his pod. If she was this loyal to an oath she didn't want to keep, he could only imagine how useful she'd be when actually motivated. You're right, he sighed, adjusting his grip on the weapon. Luckily for you, I know a great medic. He leapt at Rexy, fainting at the last second, dodging a punch that would have connected with his gut. He swung the bar as hard as he could at her back, feeling and hearing the audible crunch of ribs breaking under his swing, as the weapon connected solidly, sending her sprawling. He stepped forward as she landed face first on the ground, and stomped with his heel as hard as he could on the side of her knee, drawing another scream from the woman as she attempted to crawl away from him. Sorry, Rexy, he said, as he kneeled over her back, placing the bar across the side of her neck and began to pull, intent on cutting off the blood flow to her brain. Wish it didn't have to be like this. Rexy began to struggle half-heartedly as she lost consciousness, gurgling softly beneath him as blood and saliva dribbled onto the floor. She wouldn't die, but she'd have a hell of a headache when she woke up. When she stood under him, he kept pressure for several more seconds before releasing her. He stooped to pull her sidearm from his holster on her hip, and stood to his feet, walking over to where her helmet lay near the door. He placed it on his head, listening to static over the radio. They're probably jamming comms, he thought, before shrugging and pressing the broadcast button. This is Adam, he stated into the radio. Any friendly Imperial forces, please respond. Several seconds of silence followed, before a private channel request clicked on the helmet. He accepted it and waited briefly. Adam, this is Kamalesh. What the fuck are you up to? Aunt Cammy, he exclaimed into the helmet. I'm following the Duchess. You guys got eyes on her? Not yet, her voice replied before returning. Listen, we're going to send some requests to this helmet, accept them all. It'll give us access to their closed system for any trackers. It'll help us guide airstrikes and maybe get a beat on the big bitch's location. Too easy. Send them quick, then I'm headed out. Chick I took this off has a way bigger head than me, he replied, doing his best to sound happy as he looked to the groaning woman several feet from him. Also, this helmet? Mark it as capture, not kill. Why? Kamalesh asked, sounding genuinely confused. She's an intel goldmine, and dislikes the Duchess. As soon as I gut the big bitch all the Osh she cares so much about go the fuck away. Might allow us to hunt down any remnants more efficiently, Adam answered, looking down at the woman through the visor. Solid copy. By the way, if you hop in for another enemy radio, your call sign is Hele. Not a problem, he replied, tapping the accept traffic prompt on the helmet. Now where's my target? Victually is headed east, through the main drag of the compound. Tracker puts 3 combatants between you and her. Follow the hallway out, make a left turn at the T, and go straight for 3 intersections. On it. Thanks for the help. Oh, and Adam? She asked, as he was about to take the helmet off. Yup. Don't die. Adam snorted, and set the helmet next to Rexy before stacking on the door, slowly sliding it open to look out into the hallway. You're mine now, bitch.